Hannah Whitmore never imagined silence could be so loud. The kitchen clock ticked like a countdown, each second tightening the rope cutting into her wrists. She was tied to a wooden chair, her swollen belly pressed forward, her breath shallow and fast. Across from her, Vanessa Cole stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, calm and focused, holding a professional archery bow as if this were a private training session, not a nightmare. Vanessa lifted the bow slowly. The arrow slid into place with a soft click that made Hannah flinch harder than any scream could have. The sharp tip pointed directly at her stomach. 8 months pregnant. One wrong breath. One twitch. Behind Hannah, her 1-year-old daughter Lily cried from her crib in the living room, a thin, broken sound that cut through the air and into Hannah's chest. "Please," Hannah whispered, her voice cracked. "She's just a baby. Don't do this in front of her." Vanessa's lips curved into a faint smile. "That's exactly why she should see," she said. "So she knows who really wins." Derek Whitmore stood near the doorway, pale and frozen. He was still wearing his work jacket, the one with the corporate logo stitched neatly over his heart. His hands trembled at his sides, but he did nothing. He didn't step forward. He didn't tell Vanessa to stop. His eyes flicked between the bow and the floor like a man watching his own life collapse in slow motion. Hannah turned her head toward him, tears streaking down her face. "Derek," she begged, "please, I'm your wife." For a moment it looked like he might move. His mouth opened, then Vanessa pulled the bowstring back farther. The tension hummed, sharp and alive. "Say one word," Vanessa warned him. "And I let go." Derek closed his mouth. The silence that followed was worse than a scream. Hannah's arms burned. Her back ached. The baby kicked inside her, a sudden movement that made her gasp. Vanessa noticed and laughed softly, almost lovingly, as if admiring a perfect shot. "You see," Vanessa said, her voice low, "this was never about love. It's about space, and there's only room for one woman in his life." Lily's cries grew weaker, hoarse from fear. Hannah felt something break inside her, a deep, final crack where hope used to live. She lowered her head, pressing her chin to her chest, trying to shield her unborn child with her own body. That was when the doorbell rang. The sound was ordinary, simple, completely out of place. Vanessa stiffened. Derek looked up, startled. Hannah raised her head slowly, her heart pounding as the doorbell rang again, louder this time, steady and unafraid. Someone was at the door. No one inside the house knew yet that this knock would end everything they thought they controlled. Outside, a man waited, patient and certain, carrying truths sharpened by time. For Hannah, it was the first sound of rescue, justice, and survival finally arriving home. The doorbell echoed again, but no one moved. Hannah's heart slammed against her ribs as Vanessa lowered the bow an inch, irritation flashing across her face. Derek took one step back, as if distance could save him from what was coming. Hannah's wrists throbbed, the rope biting deeper each time she shifted, and her legs shook from holding herself upright for so long. Her mind drifted, uninvited, to how she had ended up here. 2 years earlier, she had believed in ordinary happiness. Derek had been attentive then, bringing coffee in the mornings, holding her hand during doctor visits, promising stability. She sold her car after Lily was born because Derek said it was unnecessary. He insisted on managing the money, saying it reduced stress. Hannah agreed, trusting him, trusting marriage. When she became pregnant again, the tone of the house changed. Derek started staying late in Manhattan, claiming meetings and deadlines. He guarded his phone, took calls in the bathroom, locked his laptop with a new password. Hannah noticed everything. Yet she told herself she was tired, hormonal, imagining threats where none existed. She had no savings, no access to accounts, no family nearby. Silence felt safer than confrontation. Vanessa entered their lives slowly, like a stain spreading under clean water. Derek introduced her as a fitness consultant, helping him stay sharp. She was confident, athletic, and unsettlingly comfortable in their home. She corrected Hannah on how to hold Lily, how to cook, how to speak. Derek laughed it off. Hannah swallowed her discomfort and apologized for being sensitive. The control tightened without Hannah realizing it. Derek kept her ID in his desk for safekeeping. He said driving wasn't safe while pregnant. He discouraged her from calling old friends, claiming they judged her. Days blurred together inside the house, filled with diapers, nausea, and quiet dread. Hannah began to feel smaller, as if the walls were closing in. Now those walls felt real. Vanessa stepped closer, the bow still raised, her shadow stretching across Hannah's belly. "You never fought for your place," Vanessa said calmly. "You just waited to be replaced." Hannah tried to steady her breathing. Lily's cries had faded into soft hiccups, exhausted and afraid. The baby inside her shifted again, and Hannah whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. She would protect them. Somehow. The doorbell rang a third time. Firm. Deliberate. Vanessa's confidence wavered. She glanced at Derek, who looked as trapped as Hannah felt. Sweat darkened his collar. He shook his head slightly, a silent plea to make it stop. Hannah watched him then. Really watched him. And understood the truth. He had already chosen himself. He always would. Vanessa lowered the bow completely and turned toward the front door, irritation replacing cruelty. "Stay," she ordered Derek. "If you move, this ends badly." Hannah closed her eyes as footsteps approached the door. The lock clicked. Cold air rushed in. A man's voice filled the house, low and steady, carrying authority without volume. "I'm here to see my daughter," the voice said, "and my grandchildren." Hannah's eyes flew open. Her breath caught. She knew that voice from childhood memories and unanswered questions. Tears spilled freely as realization hit her with stunning force. The worst night of her life had just collided with a past she thought was gone forever. Outside, distant sirens began to rise, blending with the wind, promising consequences. Inside, Hannah felt fear mix with fragile hope. Whatever waited beyond this doorway, her suffering was no longer invisible, and the balance of power had finally shifted that night now. Samuel Whitmore stepped into the house like a man who already owned the truth. His gray coat hung heavy with rain, and his eyes moved from the bow to the ropes to Hannah's face without surprise. Vanessa froze, her fingers tightening around the bow as if instinct could save her. Derek backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. Samuel spoke again, his voice calm, practiced, and final. "Put it down," he said. Vanessa laughed sharply, but the sound lacked confidence. "You don't belong here," she snapped. Samuel stepped closer, ignoring her completely. He knelt in front of Hannah, careful not to touch her, his gaze softening for the first time. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he said quietly. Hannah shook, tears blurring everything. Memories flooded back, a man leaving in the night, unanswered letters, silence that hardened into grief. She had believed he abandoned her. Now he was here. Vanessa lifted the bow again, panic breaking through her control. "You think you can scare me?" she said. Samuel stood slowly, his body blocking Hannah without hesitation. "I don't need to scare you," he replied. "I need to end this." He reached into his coat and placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, photographs, and recorded timelines. Evidence of Derek's affair, Vanessa's violent history, and illegal financial transfers. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. "You ruined everything," he whispered. Samuel turned to him then, his expression cold. "You did," he corrected. Sirens wailed closer now. Vanessa lunged, desperate, but Samuel caught the bow and twisted it from her grip. The arrow clattered harmlessly across the floor. Police voices shouted outside. Vanessa collapsed to her knees, screaming. Derek slid down the wall. Empty. Samuel cut Hannah's ropes himself. She fell forward into his arms, sobbing. For the first time in years, she felt protected. As officers rushed in, Samuel held her steady. The nightmare was not over, but the balance had changed forever. Hannah heard Lily crying again, alive and close. Samuel nodded toward the sound, grounding her. "She's safe now," he said. Paramedics moved through the doorway, calm and efficient, a blanket wrapped around Hannah's shoulders. Vanessa was cuffed, still shouting excuses no one believed. Derek could not meet Hannah's eyes. Samuel leaned down and spoke softly to his daughter. "This ends tonight," he promised. Hannah looked at him, fear and relief colliding inside her. She realized then that survival was not the same as justice. Justice was finally walking through her door. Outside, red and blue lights washed the house in color. Neighbors gathered, whispers spreading fast. Hannah held her belly and stood taller than she had in months. Pain remained, but power returned. She watched Vanessa taken away, screaming her name with hate. Hannah did not answer. She had nothing left to prove. Samuel placed a steady hand on her back. Behind the chaos, a future waited, uncertain, but hers. Hannah took a slow breath and stepped forward into the light. The night that nearly destroyed her had failed. What followed would be harder, louder, and public, but she would not face it alone again. For the first time, the truth stood beside her. And the people who hurt her were finally afraid. As the door closed behind the police, Hannah knew the story had only begun. This house would never hold her fear again, only consequences. Somewhere deep inside, strength unfolded quietly, ready for what came next. Justice had a face now, and it was watching everything. Nothing would stop it. Morning came without mercy. Hannah woke in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and rain-soaked coats. Her wrists were bruised purple, her throat raw from crying, and her stomach ached with fear every time the baby moved. Lily slept in a crib beside the bed, cheeks flushed, thumb in her mouth. Sirens were gone, but the noise inside Hannah's head would not stop. Samuel sat in the corner chair, hands folded, eyes open, despite the sleepless night. He had answered questions from police, doctors, and social workers without once raising his voice. To them, he was calm and cooperative. To Hannah, he was a stranger, carrying familiar sorrow. 15 years of absence hung between them like unfinished business neither knew how to touch. The doctor said the baby was stable, but stress could trigger early labor. Hannah nodded and pretended to understand, though her hands shook beneath the blanket. Everything now felt fragile. Her marriage, her safety, her future. Derek had not come to the hospital. No texts, no calls. Only a message through an officer saying he had hired a lawyer. That knowledge hurt more than the ropes ever had. Derek was already protecting himself. Hannah realized she had never truly known the man she married. Samuel watched her face carefully, reading each shift of emotion. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. She asked why he left, why he never came back, why everything had been so hard. Samuel did not answer right away. He stood and walked to the window, watching rain streak down the glass. Then he told her about a federal investigation, about being framed by a partner, about threats that followed him home. Leaving was the only way to keep Hannah safe. He had watched from a distance, always waiting. Hannah wanted to scream at him, to blame him for every lonely night and every compromise she had made. Instead, she cried quietly while Lily slept. Samuel apologized without excuses. He did not ask for forgiveness. He only asked for a chance to help now. For the first time, Hannah believed him. Outside the room, lawyers began moving pieces Hannah could not yet see. Samuel made calls, names dropped, connections activated. Derek's company placed him on immediate leave pending investigation. Vanessa's arrest spread through corporate circles like wildfire. By afternoon, Hannah's name was no longer whispered with pity, but with attention. A nurse returned with discharge papers and warnings. Hannah would need rest, support, stability. She almost laughed at the word. Stability had been a lie for years. As she signed the forms, she felt something shift. The victim label no longer fit. She was angry now, and anger gave her strength. That evening, as the sun fell behind the city, Samuel promised her protection, legal and personal. Hannah listened, holding Lily, feeling the baby kick again. This time she did not flinch. What happened in that house would not define her ending. It would define her beginning. Across town, Derek sat alone in a rented office, staring at his phone as messages went unanswered. Vanessa's name dominated the news, her past exposed in brutal detail. He finally understood how small he was without Hannah absorbing the damage. Power had shifted, quietly but completely. While he planned defenses, Hannah planned survival. And survival, she sensed, would soon turn into something far more dangerous for everyone who underestimated her resolve. The coming days would strip lies bare, test loyalties, and force every player to choose a side, whether ready or not, as consequences gathered momentum, with no path left for retreat anywhere. The next morning, Hannah returned to the house she once called home, escorted by a police officer and a social worker. The rooms felt smaller, stripped of warmth, as if fear had soaked into the walls. Yellow evidence tape crossed the kitchen doorway where the chair still lay overturned. Hannah's legs trembled, but she walked forward anyway, Lily secured against her chest. Every object carried weight. The couch where Derek once slept during arguments, the table where she signed birthday cards alone, the hallway mirror where she barely recognized herself anymore. This house had trained her to shrink. Now it watched her reclaim space. The officer explained the process in a steady voice. Personal items only, no confrontations. Derek was not allowed within 500 feet. Hannah nodded, absorbing instructions while her mind raced ahead. She was no longer reacting. She was choosing. Upstairs, she opened the bedroom closet and saw how little had ever been hers. 2 dresses, 1 pair of shoes, documents missing, her passport gone, her fingers curled into fists. Control had been quiet, deliberate, invisible, until it wasn't. The social worker spoke gently about emergency housing, assistance programs, temporary protection orders. Hannah listened, then surprised herself by declining. She had options now, real ones. She had a father who showed up. She had proof. She had leverage. Downstairs, a knock echoed through the house. Hannah froze, instinct flaring. The officer answered. 2 men in suits stood outside, polite but firm. Corporate investigators. Derek's company crest shone on their folders. They asked questions about Vanessa, about Derek's finances, about unusual transfers. Hannah answered carefully, truthfully, every word precise. As they left, Hannah understood something important. Derek had not just betrayed her. He had exposed himself. Ambition without loyalty collapses quickly. Power borrowed never lasts. Later that afternoon, Hannah sat in the empty living room while Samuel spoke with her attorney on speakerphone. Asset freezes. Internal reviews. Vanessa's charges expanding. The words sounded unreal, yet satisfying. For the first time, consequences were moving faster than fear. Lily babbled, tugging at Hannah's shirt. Hannah kissed her head and felt a quiet resolve settle deep inside. She would not raise her children in survival mode. She would build safety from the ground up. That night, they left the house for good. Hannah paused at the doorway, looking back once. She did not cry. She did not curse. She simply closed the door and handed the keys to the officer. Across the city, Derek watched his email flood with suspensions, notices, unanswered pleas. He called Hannah and reached voicemail. He called Samuel and was blocked. For the first time, no one softened the fall for him. Hannah stepped into the waiting car beside her father, Lily asleep, her future uncertain, but finally her own. The road ahead would be hard, but it would be honest. And honesty, she was learning, was the beginning of real power. Behind them, the house stood silent, stripped of authority. Hannah did not know yet how public the fallout would become, how names would circulate, how doors would open and slam shut. She only knew that fear no longer drove her decisions. Each step forward felt earned, painful, and necessary. Tomorrow would bring courtrooms, headlines, and hard choices. Tonight brought breath, distance, and sleep. For the first time since her wedding day, Hannah rested without permission, without apology, and without waiting for someone else to decide her worth. Justice was moving closer now, and Hannah would meet it standing, not bound, carrying her children, her truth, and her future forward with unwavering calm inside. Court arrived faster than Hannah expected. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished wood, a place where voices softened and footsteps echoed with consequence. Hannah walked in holding Lily's small hand, her belly heavy beneath a borrowed coat. Samuel walked beside her, steady, silent, present. Cameras waited outside, but inside the building, everything narrowed to procedure, order, and truth. Derek sat at the defense table when Hannah entered. He looked smaller than she remembered, shoulders hunched, confidence drained. He did not look at her. His attorney whispered urgently, flipping pages, already behind. Across the aisle, the prosecutor organized exhibits with calm precision. Vanessa was absent, held without bail after additional charges surfaced overnight. Her name hung in the room like a warning. When Hannah was sworn in, her voice shook only once. She told the story slowly. The isolation, the missing documents, the night with the bow. Lily's cries, Derek's silence, each detail landed with weight. The judge listened, without interruption, eyes sharp, pen still. Samuel watched from the gallery, fists clenched, pride and regret crossing his face. Derek's attorney tried to suggest exaggeration, stress, misunderstanding. Hannah did not react. She answered clearly, simply, refusing to be baited. Evidence followed her words: text messages, financial records, photographs of bruises, a recorded voicemail where Derek admitted he couldn't control Vanessa anymore. The courtroom shifted. Doubt evaporated. By noon, the temporary orders were issued. Full protection for Hannah and her children. Exclusive use of funds pending review. Derek barred from contact. Hannah felt air return to her lungs. This was not victory, but it was ground gained. Outside, reporters surged. Samuel shielded Hannah without touching her, letting her choose her distance. She said nothing. Silence was power now. Across the street, Derek watched the scene unravel, his phone vibrating with alerts he did not open. Sponsors withdrew. His company announced cooperation with authorities. The ladder he climbed snapped rung by rung. That evening, Hannah returned to the small apartment Samuel arranged. It was quiet, clean, temporary. She fed Lily, folded, donated clothes, sat with her thoughts. Fear still lived there, but it no longer owned the space. She began writing everything down, dates and details, reclaiming her story line by line. Before sleep fully claimed her, Hannah checked the locks twice and sat beside Lily's bed, listening to her breathe. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who apologized for existing. That woman felt distant now. Pain had carved something harder, clearer. Tomorrow, she would testify again, sign affidavits, and face strangers who judged without knowing. She accepted that. What mattered was endurance. Justice was not loud vengeance, it was persistence. It was staying upright when history tried to bend her. Hannah turned off the light, resolved to continue, certain that every step forward narrowed the distance between survival and freedom. Morning would arrive, and she would meet it unafraid. The media storm broke the next morning. Hannah woke to dozens of missed calls she did not answer. Headlines spread fast, painting fragments of her life into spectacle. Samuel advised restraint, reminding her that silence still served her. She focused on routine instead, packing Lily's bag, drinking water, breathing through the baby's movements. By mid-morning, their attorney arrived with new information. Derek's company had terminated him effective immediately, citing gross misconduct and reputational harm. His access to accounts was revoked, his benefits frozen, his professional network evaporating in real time. Hannah listened quietly, feeling neither joy nor pity, only distance. Vanessa's situation worsened as well. Investigators uncovered prior complaints buried by settlements, training facilities that ignored safety violations, and messages revealing obsession and intent. Prosecutors added charges, eliminating any chance of early release. For the first time, Hannah felt the threat receding, replaced by accountability with teeth. In the afternoon, Hannah met with a therapist recommended by the court. The office was warm, the voice patient. She spoke about control disguised as care, about fear taught slowly, about shame that kept her quiet. Saying it aloud loosened something inside her chest. Healing felt possible, not promised, but reachable. Samuel spent the day coordinating logistics, never hovering, always asking permission. He arranged childcare support, prenatal care, and a secure schedule for court dates. Hannah noticed the difference between protection and possession. It mattered. Trust grew carefully, like a bridge rebuilt plank by plank. That evening, a knock came at the apartment door. Hannah froze, then steadied herself. It was Ethan Moore, the attorney handling her civil claims, carrying files and a calm presence. He spoke plainly, explaining options, risks, and timelines without pressure. He listened more than he talked. Hannah appreciated that. They reviewed evidence together. Financial records showed Derek's hidden transfers. Witness statements confirmed intimidation. Ethan outlined a strategy that prioritized safety, custody, and long-term stability. Hannah signed nothing yet. Choice belonged to her now, and she intended to use it deliberately. After Ethan left, Hannah sat by the window watching city lights flicker on. Lily slept nearby, safe. The baby rolled gently inside her, steady and strong. Hannah rested a hand on her belly and felt grounded. The chaos outside no longer defined the center. Across town, Derek packed boxes in silence, eviction imminent, friends unreachable. He replayed moments he dismissed, warnings he ignored. Regret arrived late and useless. Consequences did not negotiate. Hannah closed the curtains and turned toward tomorrow. Court would continue, stories would evolve, But the arc was set. She was no longer surviving someone else's choices, she was shaping her own. That realization, quiet and firm, carried her into sleep with resolve, knowing the next chapter would demand courage, and she had learned how to provide it. Night settled deeper, but Hannah remained awake, listening. She catalogued sounds, the hum of traffic, the refrigerator click, Lily's breath. Safety required awareness now. She planned practical steps, appointments, passwords, childcare, savings, small decisions built control. Samuel knocked softly, offering tea, respecting distance. Hannah accepted, grateful. They talked quietly about boundaries, timelines, and rest. He promised consistency, not rescue. That mattered. When he left, Hannah wrote a list for morning, steady hands, clear mind. Fear still whispered, but it no longer commanded. Tomorrow would test her again. Yet she trusted preparation. With the list complete, Hannah lay back, breathing evenly, choosing hope without illusions, strength without noise, and patience as her shield. Sleep arrived slowly, earned through resolve, faith, and the promise of safer days ahead, for her, her children, and the life she reclaimed. The next hearing was different. The courtroom was fuller, tension thicker, every seat occupied by attorneys, observers, and quiet curiosity. Hannah entered composed, wearing a simple navy dress that made her feel grounded. Samuel stayed in the back row this time, giving her space. Ethan stood beside her, calm, prepared, unshaken. The judge reviewed new filings with measured patience. Derek's former company submitted internal reports confirming misuse of funds and violations of conduct policies. The words were clinical, but their impact was sharp. Derek's name appeared repeatedly, attached to failures that could no longer be blamed on anyone else. Hannah listened without looking at him. Vanessa was brought in under guard, wrists cuffed, expression stripped of arrogance. For the first time, she looked small. Her attorney argued diminished capacity, emotional distress, shared responsibility. The judge listened, unimpressed. Evidence countered every claim. Training certifications, past complaints, threatening messages. Intent became undeniable. When Hannah was called again, she stood straight. She spoke about fear, yes, but also about choice. She explained how silence had been taught to her, rewarded, and enforced. She described the moment she realized survival required truth. Her voice did not break. That steadiness shifted the room. The judge issued expanded orders before lunch. Vanessa was denied bail permanently. Derek's assets were placed under court supervision. Custody provisions favored Hannah fully, with supervised visitation only upon evaluation. Each ruling landed like a door closing behind her, sealing danger out. Outside, reporters pushed closer. Hannah answered one question only. She said, "I want my children safe, and I want accountability." Then she walked away. The statement echoed louder than anything else she could have offered. That afternoon, Ethan outlined the civil case path. Compensation was possible, but more importantly, so was precedent. Hannah nodded. She cared less about money than certainty. Stability mattered. Safety mattered. Truth mattered. At home, Hannah found a package waiting. Inside were copies of documents Samuel had safeguarded for years. Her birth certificate, a small savings bond, letters never sent, proof of care expressed quietly. She cried, not from pain, but release. Across the city, Derek met with creditors, reality closing in. Friends avoided him. His reflection looked unfamiliar. He realized too late that control without respect isolates absolutely. That night, Hannah sat at the kitchen table, writing plans, school options, therapy schedules, work possibilities after maternity leave. Each line was a step forward. She felt tired, but purposeful. As she turned off the light, Hannah understood the shift. Power had moved not because someone saved her, but because she stood up and stayed standing. The case would continue. The world would watch. But her life was no longer a spectacle. It was hers, protected by boundaries, truth, and the certainty that consequences were finally real. She slept lightly, waking often, but without panic. Morning would bring new hearings, deeper scrutiny, and harder questions. Hannah accepted that weight. She had crossed the line between fear and action, and there was no return. Whatever came next, she would face it openly, with records, witnesses, and resolve. The story unfolding was no longer controlled by lies. It moved forward under light, pressure, and time. Hannah breathed slowly, counting each inhale, grounding herself in the present moment. She was still afraid, but fear no longer dictated her choices. Experience had hardened into wisdom. Pain had clarified priorities. Tomorrow promised confrontation, but also progress. Step by step, truth was reshaping her future, and she intended to meet it without flinching. Justice was approaching steadily now, and Hannah stood ready, grounded, alert, and unwilling to surrender anything ever again. The final twist began quietly, the way the most dangerous truths often do. 3 days after the expanded orders, Ethan called Hannah early in the morning and asked her to sit down before he spoke. His tone was controlled, but underneath it carried weight. New documents had surfaced overnight, documents Derek never expected anyone to connect to him. They showed that Derek had not simply hidden money. He had knowingly signed off on falsified safety reports tied to Vanessa's training facilities, reports that allowed her to continue working despite multiple violent incidents. One of those reports bore his digital signature, time-stamped months before the night Hannah was tied to the chair. It meant he had protected Vanessa long before he betrayed his wife openly. Hannah felt the room tilt. This was no longer just personal cruelty, it was systemic harm. Ethan explained what it meant in plain terms: criminal exposure, corporate liability, federal attention. Derek's silence during the attack was no accident. It was consistent with who he had been choosing to be for years. By noon, investigators requested a formal interview. Hannah was not required to attend, but she chose to. She sat in a quiet room, hands folded, answering questions carefully. She did not dramatize. She did not speculate. She told the truth, trusting it to stand on its own. The officers thanked her, and she knew something irreversible had been set in motion. That afternoon, Samuel finally told her the last secret he had kept. Years ago, while working in risk analysis, he had crossed paths with Derek's company. He recognized the warning signs early and had quietly monitored them, not realizing his own daughter would one day be affected. Guilt settled heavy between them, but so did resolve. When the news broke, it was immediate and brutal. Derek was arrested on charges related to fraud, obstruction, and endangerment. His former colleagues released statements distancing themselves. His lawyer resigned within hours. Vanessa's case expanded again, now tied directly to Derek's actions. The narrative shifted completely. Hannah watched the coverage without satisfaction. Only clarity. The man who let her suffer had built a life on enabling harm. Now that structure was collapsing publicly, piece by piece. She held Lily close and felt the baby move, strong and steady, as if reminding her why endurance mattered. That evening, Ethan visited briefly to explain next steps. Hannah would receive restitution. Custody was secure. More importantly, there would be no quiet escape for the people who hurt her. Accountability would be permanent, documented, unavoidable. As night fell, Hannah stepped onto the balcony and breathed in cool air. The city lights felt different now, less threatening, more distant. She thought about the woman she was becoming, shaped by truth instead of fear. Inside, Samuel watched her with pride and humility. He understood that his role was not to lead, but to support. Hannah had already done the hardest part herself. The final twist was not revenge, it was revelation. Derek had not been weak, he had been willing. Vanessa had not acted alone, and Hannah had not survived by luck. She survived because truth, once uncovered, demanded justice. And justice had finally answered. Tomorrow would bring sentencing arguments, restitution hearings, and a future rewritten under oath. Hannah knew healing would take time, patience, and vigilance. But she also knew fear no longer owned her voice. She would raise her children with truth, boundaries, and courage, teaching them that love without respect is never love, and silence is not safety. It would guide every decision she made from this moment forward. Sentencing day arrived with a quiet gravity that pressed on Hannah's chest. The courtroom felt colder, the benches harder, the air thinner. She wore the same navy dress, not for symbolism, but because it reminded her she had survived every day leading here. Lily stayed with a caregiver. The baby kicked steadily, a calm rhythm anchoring her breath. Derek entered in custody, wrists chained, eyes hollow. He glanced at Hannah once, searching for something he had forfeited. She did not look back. Vanessa followed, escorted, her confidence gone, jaw tight with disbelief. The judge reviewed the record patiently, outlining choices, warnings ignored, harm multiplied. Each sentence stripped excuses away. Victim statements were invited. Hannah stood. She spoke about nights without sleep, about learning fear in increments, about the moment silence stopped protecting anyone. She did not insult, she did not threaten, she asked for accountability and distance. Her voice stayed level, and that steadiness carried weight. The rulings followed. Vanessa received a lengthy sentence for aggravated assault, unlawful restraint, and coercion. Programs were mandated, privileges revoked. Derek was sentenced for fraud, conspiracy, and endangerment, his time compounded by leadership responsibility. Restitution was ordered. Assets were seized. Contact was prohibited indefinitely. The gavel struck, final and unyielding. Hannah exhaled, not in triumph, but release. Justice had a shape now, defined by dates and orders, not fear. Outside, the crowd murmured, cameras lifted. Hannah declined comment and kept walking. Weeks later, life reorganized quietly. Funds arrived under court supervision, enough to secure stability without excess. Hannah moved into a sunlit apartment near a park. Lily learned new words. The baby arrived early but strong, a boy with steady lungs and a stubborn grip. Hannah named him Noah, a reminder that storms pass. Samuel visited often, always asking first. He helped without directing. Trust grew in practical ways, through consistency and respect. Ethan remained professional, present, and kind, guiding paperwork, then stepping back. One evening, over takeout and tired laughter, Hannah noticed how safe the room felt. That mattered. Derek's appeals failed. Vanessa's name faded from headlines into records. Consequences endured. Hannah enrolled in classes she postponed for years, rediscovering focus. Therapy continued. Healing did not erase memory. It integrated it. Spring came. On a quiet afternoon by the water, Ethan asked if Hannah would consider a future built slowly, transparently, together. No rescue, no rush. Hannah looked at her children, then at him, and said yes to possibility. The ending was not revenge, it was restoration. Hannah stood at the edge of her life, no longer bound, no longer quiet, carrying what she earned. Safety, truth, love chosen freely. The past remained documented. The future remained open. And for the first time, Hannah stepped forward without fear, certain that accountability had cleared the path she deserved. She prepared a small ceremony by the river, nothing extravagant, just witnesses who mattered. Vows were simple, promises practical, laughter unforced. Hannah wore white not for innocence, but for clarity. She kept her name, kept her boundaries, kept her voice. Ethan accepted all of it without negotiation. Samuel held Lily, smiling through tears, while Noah slept against Hannah's heart. When the sun dipped low, Hannah felt complete without being owned. The applause was quiet, sincere, earned. Later, as lights reflected on the water, Hannah understood the lesson fully. Power that harms collapses. Love that listens endures. Her story would travel, but it would no longer define her. She would define it. Tomorrow she planned breakfast, school runs, work, rest, and joy. Choosing ordinary days as victories, she would protect fiercely for herself and children. Life after the verdict did not slow down, it sharpened. Hannah learned that healing demanded structure, not slogans. Mornings began early with bottles warmed, shoes found, and calendars checked. She built routines because routines built safety. Therapy sessions turned memories into timelines, triggers into plans. She learned to ground herself when sirens passed, when doors slammed, when her phone vibrated unexpectedly. Work returned gradually. Hannah accepted a remote position with a small customer care team, flexible hours, and clear boundaries. The paycheck mattered, but dignity mattered more. Each completed task reminded her that competence had never left. It had only been buried. She saved quietly, opened accounts in her own name, and taught herself budgeting with patience. Independence felt earned, not gifted. Ethan remained present without pressure. He cooked badly, listened well, and respected pauses. They discussed expectations openly, including fears, custody schedules, and privacy. Hannah appreciated the absence of urgency. Love, she learned, could be calm. When disagreements arose, they stayed small because honesty stayed large. Trust accumulated through repetition, not declarations. Samuel adjusted too. He attended parenting classes with Hannah, not as an expert but as a learner. He apologized again when necessary and accepted limits without argument. Their relationship became practical and sincere. He showed up for school events, medical appointments, and quiet evenings. Consistency replaced regret. Public attention faded, replaced by normal days. Yet reminders surfaced. A bow in a sports store window tightened Hannah's chest. She practiced breathing, named the feeling, let it pass. Healing was not linear, it was workable. She celebrated small wins, like sleeping through the night, driving again, laughing without checking exits. One afternoon, Hannah received a letter from the court confirming restitution, completion, and permanent enforcement orders. She read it slowly, then filed it away. Closure did not require ceremony, it required certainty. With certainty came peace. Spring turned to summer. The children thrived. Lily learned to swim. Noah learned to grin. Hannah photographed ordinary moments and printed them, filling frames with proof of continuity. Life did not erase the past. It built beyond it. At a neighborhood gathering, a woman asked Hannah how she found the courage to start over. Hannah answered honestly. Courage came after preparation, after boundaries, after choosing truth repeatedly. It was not a trait, it was a practice. That night, Hannah and Ethan talked about marriage without fantasy. They agreed to counseling before vows, shared finances with safeguards, and mutual exit plans nobody intended to use. Planning for safety strengthened commitment. Hannah felt respected, not owned. The future looked steady. Not perfect, not dramatic, but grounded. Hannah understood now that justice had opened a door, but walking through required daily intention. She closed the journal, kissed her children, and turned off the light, ready for tomorrow, confident that ordinary peace was the reward she would defend. Before sleep, she set alarms, reviewed passwords, and placed documents in labeled folders. Preparation calmed her nerves. She texted her therapist, scheduled sessions, and noted progress without judgment. Hannah practiced gratitude carefully, naming 3 concrete facts each night. She also practiced vigilance, locking doors, trusting instincts, and asking for help. Balance mattered. Tomorrow included groceries, homework, meetings, and laughter. None were heroic. All were meaningful. She smiled, turned on the fan, listened to rain, and rested, knowing endurance, consistency, and kindness would keep rebuilding her life, steadily, honestly, and on her terms. With patience, she accepted uncertainty, protected joy, honored boundaries, and planned gently, believing tomorrow's quiet choices would compound into security, freedom, and lasting peace for her growing family through discipline, community, and love she trusted. Autumn arrived quietly, and with it came a sense of consolidation rather than conflict. Hannah noticed how her days felt fuller but less chaotic, shaped by intention instead of reaction. She walked Lily to preschool each morning, Noah strapped against her chest, breathing in the crisp air as leaves gathered along the sidewalks. Ordinary sights grounded her more than therapy ever could. Work responsibilities expanded, slowly and respectfully. Hannah was offered a supervisory role, not because of sympathy, but because she delivered results consistently. She accepted with clear conditions, negotiated hours, and documented expectations. The confidence surprised her, yet it felt natural, like a muscle finally used again. Independence, she realized, grew through decisions honored. Ethan remained steady. Their relationship deepened through planning rather than passion. They attended counseling, discussed finances openly, and agreed on legal protections before romance. Some friends found it unromantic. Hannah found it freeing. Love that protected autonomy felt safer than promises whispered in the dark. Samuel downsized his life to remain close. He bought a modest apartment nearby and resisted directing Hannah's choices. When disagreements arose, they addressed them calmly. Repair mattered more than pride. The children benefited from consistency, from adults who modeled accountability instead of avoidance. One afternoon, Hannah received an invitation to speak at a community workshop about financial safety and coercive control. Her first instinct was refusal. Visibility once meant danger. After reflection, she agreed, setting boundaries and security measures. On the day of the talk, she spoke plainly, without drama, focusing on practical signs and resources. The response was quiet, grateful, and profound. Afterward, a woman approached her, eyes wet, holding a notebook filled with questions. Hannah listened, offered resources, and did not promise rescue. Empowerment, she had learned, respected agency. Walking home, she felt a measured pride. Her past had become a tool, not a wound. Legal matters continued in the background. Appeals were denied. Records sealed where appropriate. Hannah followed updates without obsession. Closure meant knowing, not reliving. She stored documents digitally and physically, prepared but not consumed. As winter approached, Hannah planned deliberately. She increased savings, updated wills, and confirmed guardianship plans. These tasks felt heavy, yet reassuring. Preparation equaled care. She involved Ethan transparently, and he responded with respect, never entitlement. One evening, as snow began to fall, Ethan asked Hannah if she would consider marriage in the spring. He did not kneel. He did not perform. He asked calmly, acknowledging her conditions and his responsibilities. Hannah took time, then agreed, smiling through tears she no longer feared. The chapter closed without spectacle. Hannah understood that healing did not require forgetting. It required building systems that made harm harder and safety ordinary. She tucked Lily into bed, rocked Noah gently, and stood at the window watching snow soften the city. Peace felt earned, maintained, and real. Tomorrow would bring routines, commitments, and growth. Hannah welcomed it, grounded in clarity, supported by trust, and guided by the knowledge that her life now belonged fully to her. She reflected on boundaries learned, mistakes forgiven, and courage practiced daily. Each lesson reshaped how she loved, worked, and rested. Hannah accepted that fear might revisit, but preparation would answer it. She committed to vigilance without paranoia, openness without naivety. Community mattered, so did joy. With winter settling, she planned holidays simply, valuing presence over perfection. The future no longer terrified her. It challenged her. And she was ready to meet it, patiently, honestly, and with gratitude. These choices defined her days, strengthened her family, honored her survival, and promised a life guided by intention and lasting personal peace. Winter moved towards spring with quiet determination, and Hannah felt the shift inside herself first. The wedding plans stayed modest by choice, a courthouse date, and a small gathering by the river afterward. No spectacle, no announcements, no compromises. She wanted vows that sounded like agreements, not escapes. Preparation became a language of love. Hannah and Ethan finalized a prenuptial agreement designed for fairness, transparency, and exit with dignity if ever needed. They discussed triggers, boundaries, and communication protocols. They practiced apologies and repair. Trust, Hannah learned, was built with tools. The children adjusted easily. Lily adored Ethan's patience and routines. Noah slept best against Hannah's shoulder, calm and observant. Samuel attended rehearsals without stepping into decisions, offering help only when asked. Respect replaced guilt. Presence replaced regret. A week before the ceremony, a final motion landed on Hannah's desk. Derek's remaining appeals were denied with prejudice. The order cited leadership, culpability, and enduring harm. Hannah read the ruling once, then closed the file. She did not feel relief as fireworks. She felt relief as quiet. On the morning of the ceremony, rain threatened but held back. Hannah dressed simply, hair pinned, shoes practical. She carried documents in a leather folder, because preparedness steadied her nerves. At the river, chairs faced water reflecting pale light. Friends arrived softly, bringing warmth without questions. Ethan waited without pacing. When Hannah approached, he smiled, not possessive, not triumphant, just present. The officiant spoke briefly about partnership and consent. Hannah and Ethan read vows they had written together, promising clarity, patience, and repair. They promised to protect autonomy and to choose truth, even when uncomfortable. Applause was gentle. Lily clapped proudly. Noah slept through it all. Samuel wiped his eyes and laughed at himself. Photographs captured ordinary joy, unpolished and real. Later, as food was shared and laughter settled, Hannah noticed a lightness she had not known before. Not the absence of responsibility, but the absence of fear. She could plan tomorrow without calculating escape routes. She could love without shrinking. That evening, Hannah returned home with her family, changed clothes, and tucked the children into bed. She placed the leather folder on a shelf, not as a shield, but as a reminder. Safety and love could coexist. Before sleep, Hannah wrote a final note in her journal. Justice had closed a chapter. Choice had opened another. She turned off the lamp and rested, knowing the ending was not dramatic revenge, but durable peace, earned daily, protected fiercely, and shared willingly with those who listened. Morning followed with ordinary tasks and deliberate calm. Hannah prepared breakfast, packed bags, checked schedules, and kissed foreheads. She noticed confidence in her posture, an ease earned through repetition. Emails waited, meetings scheduled, bills planned, and savings tracked. Each action affirmed agency. She drove the children to the park, watched them play, and felt present without scanning for danger. Later, she reviewed goals for the year: certifications, promotions, travel, therapy milestones, and community volunteering. She set boundaries on social media, limited interviews, and chose privacy. In the afternoon, she met Ethan to discuss guardianship documents and emergency plans, appreciating how responsibility deepened affection. Samuel visited briefly, bringing soup and leaving promptly, honoring space. As dusk settled, Hannah wrote reminders on the fridge, labeled folders, and prepared lunches. None of it felt small. It felt foundational. With night approaching, she breathed steadily, grateful for systems, people, and choices aligned with safety. Tomorrow promised work, play, and rest. Hannah welcomed all three, confident that stability, once fragile, now stood reinforced by intention, evidence, and love practiced daily with patience always intact. Public attention returned briefly when the annual industry gala released its guest list, and Hannah's name appeared beside Ethan's. She hesitated, then chose to attend. Not to perform, but to close a circle. The venue overlooked the river, glass and light reflecting a city that had once felt hostile. Security was discreet, professional, sufficient. Hannah arrived early, grounding herself with slow breaths. She wore a simple dress, comfortable shoes, and carried nothing she did not need. Ethan stayed at her side without hovering. Samuel arrived later, greeting people politely, declining interviews, protecting boundaries without drama. Inside, conversations flowed about projects and forecasts. Hannah listened, contributed when invited, and excused herself when needed. She noticed how different the room felt when she trusted her own exits. Confidence changed the physics of space. A ripple moved through the crowd when a screen near the stage displayed compliance updates. The host acknowledged recent reforms, accountability, and survivor protections. Names were not repeated, but everyone understood. Hannah felt the weight lift, not as vindication, but as recognition. Midway through the evening, a former colleague approached to apologize for believing rumors and staying silent. Hannah accepted the apology without absolution. Accountability mattered, so did growth. They spoke briefly, then parted with clarity. Later, Ethan introduced Hannah to partners who valued transparency. Opportunities emerged organically, consulting roles aligned with her skills and schedule. She took notes, not promises. Choice remained hers. As the program ended, applause filled the hall. Hannah stepped outside onto the terrace, cool air steadying her. She looked over the water and felt a quiet pride. She had returned on her terms. Across the city, records updated and audits concluded. Consequences remained active, unglamorous, effective. Hannah did not need to watch them unfold to trust they would. On the drive home, Lily asked why people clapped. Hannah answered simply, because work was done. Noah slept, fingers curled. Ethan smiled, understanding the meaning beneath the words. At home, Hannah hung her coat, placed her shoes neatly, and wrote a short list for tomorrow. Routines anchored joy. She texted her therapist, scheduled follow-ups, and closed the calendar. Before bed, she reflected on power reclaimed without spectacle. Boundaries held, truth endured, community learned. She turned off the light, knowing that presence, preparation, and patience had transformed fear into freedom. Morning would come with lunches, emails, and playtime. Hannah welcomed it. The circle had closed, not with applause, but with quiet certainty that her life now moved forward, unowned, unafraid, and deeply her own. She planned the week ahead with care, confirming childcare, deadlines, and meals, then set aside an hour for rest without guilt. Stability required maintenance. She reviewed emergency contacts, updated passwords, and tested the locks once, not twice. Vigilance stayed measured. Later, she read to Lily, answered Noah's soft cries, and laughed when bathwater splashed the floor. Joy returned in practical forms. Before sleep, Hannah wrote 3 truths she would carry. Listen to signals, protect time, ask for help. She promised herself to keep choosing clarity over comfort. The city hummed outside, ordinary and safe. Hannah breathed evenly, aware of scars that no longer dictated motion. Tomorrow would include work calls, school drop-offs, and a walk by the river. She felt ready, not fearless, but prepared, supported, and free to continue building a life defined by respect, shared responsibility, and quiet courage that lasted. It would grow through habits, friendships, learning, service, patience, and love, sustained by boundaries, evidence, and memory, guiding choices forward, protecting children, honoring truth, and preserving peace daily with intention, accountability, resilience, humility, and compassion for the future. Time did not rush Hannah anymore. It assembled itself around her choices. Weeks after the gala, she focused on consolidation, not celebration. She declined interviews, delegated tasks, and protected mornings for school drop-offs and walks by the river. Stability was not dramatic, but it was deliberate. A quiet challenge arrived when a compliance committee requested Hannah's participation as an external advisor. The role offered influence and safeguards for others, yet visibility carried risk. Hannah evaluated terms with Ethan and counsel, set security protocols, and accepted for a defined term. Agency meant deciding the frame. Meetings were structured and practical. Hannah spoke plainly about warning signs, documentation, and accountability chains. She avoided personal detail, centering systems over stories. The committee adopted new reporting thresholds and survivor protections. Progress felt incremental and real. At home, routines strengthened. Lily practiced reading, Noah learned to crawl. Hannah posted schedules, labeled cabinets, and planned meals. Organization soothed her nervous system. Therapy continued weekly, then bi-weekly, focusing on trust, repair, and present awareness. Triggers lost intensity when named early. Ethan remained consistent. They scheduled check-ins, addressed disagreements promptly, and preserved personal time. Love felt cooperative, not consuming. Hannah noticed her body relaxing around him, a reliable signal she honored. Samuel supported without steering. He attended school events, handled repairs, and respected no as an answer. Repair became habit. Family meant accountability sustained. One afternoon, Hannah received confirmation that all enforcement orders were renewed without contest. The notice was brief, procedural, final. She filed it carefully and closed the folder. Finality freed attention for growth. With spring advancing, Hannah enrolled in a certification aligned to her work. Studying reclaimed ambition once postponed, she balanced deadlines with rest, declining overcommitment. Boundaries protected progress. A small setback tested resolve when an anonymous message referenced the past. Hannah documented it, informed counsel, and blocked contact. Preparedness prevented spiral. Fear passed without ceremony. Community expanded quietly. Hannah volunteered monthly, mentored a colleague, and accepted help when offered. Reciprocity replaced isolation. On a warm evening, Hannah and Ethan planned a family trip, choosing simple accommodations and clear itineraries. Anticipation felt safe. Before sleep, Hannah reviewed her list. Hydrate, move, document, connect, rest. She reflected on the distance traveled without erasing scars. Justice had opened a door. Discipline kept it open. Hannah turned off the light, listening to the city settle. The future no longer demanded courage every minute. It asked for attention, honesty, and care. She could give those freely now, grounded in systems, relationships, and self-trust earned over time. She planned the months ahead with calendars color-coded and goals measured. Mornings included movement, protein, sunlight, and silence. Evenings included stories, baths, gratitude, and preparation for tomorrow. Hannah practiced asking for help early, accepting support without debt, and offering help without control. She learned that resilience thrives on community and clarity. At work, Hannah documented processes and trained a successor, reducing dependence. She negotiated benefits, set availability windows, and protected vacations. Professional respect grew from consistency, not sacrifice. She declined roles that compromised balance. When memories surfaced unexpectedly, Hannah paused, named them, and returned to the present. She trusted her skills and records. Safety was not luck, it was design. As seasons changed, Hannah felt pride without bravado. The arc of her life bent toward steadiness. She knew challenges would return in new forms, but she also knew her responses were different now. Prepared, supported, and self-directed, Hannah closed the day with calm certainty, choosing rest as an act of strength, and tomorrow as an invitation she accepted willingly with intention, patience, courage, accountability, humility. Change arrived through an unexpected invitation that felt heavier than praise. A national advocacy coalition asked Hannah to testify about systemic safeguards before a closed policy forum. No cameras, no applause. Just records, questions, and accountability. She agreed after reviewing security plans and limits, choosing impact over visibility. On the morning of the forum, Hannah packed deliberately. Documents organized, contacts confirmed, boundaries written. Ethan drove, not as escort but as partner, reminding her she could stop at any time. Samuel watched the children, routine steady, trust earned. Inside the conference room, professionals filled the table. Hannah spoke plainly about patterns, incentives, and failures that enable harm. She described controls without storytelling, focusing on prevention, reporting, and enforcement. The room listened. Notes were taken, commitments recorded. It felt substantial. During a break, a senior official approached privately. They thanked Hannah and offered a permanent advisory seat. Hannah asked for time. Permanence required capacity. She would decide later. Returning home, Hannah felt tired but centered. Contribution without exposure preserved her energy. She marked the day complete and rested. Days later, a small setback tested systems. A procedural error delayed a payment, triggering old anxiety. Hannah documented, called support, and resolved it calmly. The spiral never came. Practice had replaced panic. Summer advanced with ordinary victories. Lily learned to ride a bike. Noah took his first steps. Hannah celebrated with photos printed and framed. Memory mattered when curated by choice. Ethan proposed a weekend away to mark their anniversary. They planned childcare, routes, contingencies, and rest. Preparation made relaxation possible. The trip was quiet and restorative. One evening, Hannah received a letter from the coalition confirming policy changes influenced by the forum. The language was formal, the impact real. She felt pride without attachment. Samuel attended a school play and left early, respecting rhythms. Repair continued through reliability. Family felt balanced. At work, Hannah completed her certification and accepted a modest raise. She negotiated flexibility and documented scope. Growth stayed aligned with life. As the year turned, Hannah reviewed goals and closed what no longer served. She donated items tied to fear, kept tools tied to safety, and released grudges tied to pain. Forgiveness remained optional. Clarity was required. Before sleep, Hannah reflected on power redefined. Not dominance, not spectacle. Power meant choice, preparation, and care. She turned off the light, confident that whatever came next would meet systems she built and people she trusted, steady and unafraid. She paused to acknowledge grief without letting it lead. Loss still existed, but it no longer commanded direction. Hannah practiced naming emotions, choosing responses, and documenting outcomes. Each habit reinforced autonomy. She scheduled rest as seriously as meetings and protected weekends for family and nature. These practices compounded. In the following weeks, Hannah accepted the advisory seat with conditions: term limits, compensation, transparency, and survivor input. The coalition agreed. She prepared agendas and metrics, insisting on measurable change. Progress followed, incremental and verifiable. A letter arrived from a woman Hannah had helped months earlier, now safe and employed. The note was brief, sincere, and transformative. Hannah cried softly, then filed it with gratitude. On a quiet night, Hannah stood by the window and reviewed the arc behind her. Survival had become stewardship. Fear had become information. She chose to continue building, knowing peace was not passive. It was maintained by clarity, courage, and care, practiced daily together. Tomorrow would bring ordinary challenges, but Hannah trusted her systems. She closed the curtains, checked the doors, breathed evenly, and rested, ready to meet the future with steady resolve and earned calm. For her growing family, the year turned quietly, and Hannah noticed how anticipation no longer felt like fear. Plans formed with margins, buffers, and consent. She prepared for change the way she prepared for mornings, with lists and patience. Stability had taught her how to want things again without bracing for loss. Ethan suggested expanding their home by one room, a practical idea framed with options. Hannah reviewed costs, timelines, and contingencies before agreeing. The renovation stayed modest, transparent, and documented. Watching walls shift without chaos felt symbolic, change without threat. Parent-teacher meetings came and went. Lily thrived, curious and confident. Noah followed his sister everywhere, determined and loud. Hannah attended events without scanning exits, enjoying applause meant for children, not survival. She learned to sit through joy. Work brought a new project requiring travel. Hannah evaluated childcare, schedules, and security before accepting one short trip. Preparation replaced dread. The trip succeeded. She returned, rested, proud, and present. Community ties deepened. Hannah hosted dinners with clear end times and shared expectations. Conversation flowed easily. Laughter arrived without effort. She noticed how safety created space for humor, creativity, and rest. A letter arrived from the court confirming compliance audits complete and orders permanent. Hannah read it once, then recycled the envelope. Permanence felt quiet, dependable, and sufficient. Ethan and Hannah revisited marriage plans, not out of doubt, but design. They adjusted agreements, updated wills, and reaffirmed consent. Love matured through maintenance. Hannah felt seen, not secured. Samuel planned a trip of his own, trusting systems Hannah built. Letting him go without anxiety felt like growth. Independence expanded in every direction. One afternoon, Hannah received an invitation to teach a workshop. She declined politely, protecting energy. Saying no felt like honoring yes. At dusk, Hannah walked the river path with the children. Lights reflected softly. She breathed evenly. The past no longer chased her. It informed her. She carried lessons without weight. That night, Hannah reviewed her calendar and smiled. Balance held. She turned off devices early and slept deeply. Morning came ordinary and kind. Hannah prepared breakfast, packed bags, and kissed foreheads. She moved through the day with confidence, earned, not borrowed. The story did not end with spectacle. It continued with practice. Hannah chose consistency, boundaries, and care. She chose love that listened and systems that protected. Each choice compounded. As seasons shifted, Hannah trusted herself fully. Whatever arrived next would meet a woman ready, supported, and unafraid to choose again. She planned ahead for holidays, travel, and emergencies, writing checklists that calmed her body. Financial reviews became quarterly rituals, shared openly and adjusted without shame. Hannah taught Lily about choices and boundaries using simple language, modeling respect daily. Noah watched everything, absorbing tone and rhythm. At work, Hannah mentored a new hire, emphasizing documentation and rest. She declined overtime and noticed productivity rise. Leadership noticed too, rewarding clarity over sacrifice. Hannah accepted praise briefly, then returned to routine. Friends gathered for a small celebration, not of survival, but of continuity. They ate, laughed, and left on time. Hannah cleaned the kitchen without resentment, grateful for quiet. Before sleep, she reflected on identity reclaimed. She was not defined by harm or heroics. She was a parent, partner, professional, and neighbor. She trusted her instincts and corrected mistakes quickly. Tomorrow would ask for ordinary courage. Hannah felt ready. She set alarms, closed blinds, and rested, confident that steady choices would continue to build a life defined by dignity, safety, and love. With patience, resilience, and community, Hannah moved forward intentionally, protecting peace, nurturing growth, and choosing hope daily for her whole family. Consequences settled into their final shapes during late summer, quiet but irreversible. Hannah noticed how the absence of chaos created space for reflection. Derek's sentencing updates arrived through official notices only, stripped of drama, confirming long terms, financial penalties, and permanent industry bans. Vanessa's incarceration followed a similar path. Appeals denied, privileges restricted, accountability sustained. The news no longer tightened Hannah's chest. It simply existed. Hannah focused on closure without obsession. She organized documents into a single archive, labeled clearly, encrypted securely, then placed the binder on a high shelf. Preparedness replaced vigilance. Knowing she could access proof without reliving it mattered. She allowed herself to stop checking alerts. At home, routines carried healing forward. Lily practiced piano patiently. Noah toddled after her with determined joy. Hannah cooked simple meals, planned groceries, and welcomed quiet evenings. These acts grounded her more than milestones ever had. Stability felt like progress. Ethan supported without commentary, matching Hannah's pace. They celebrated small wins with walks, not speeches. Their relationship thrived on transparency, not reassurance. Trust continued accumulating through ordinary reliability. Samuel visited weekly, sometimes helping, sometimes simply listening. He respected Hannah's leadership in her own life. Repair remained ongoing, sincere, and unforced. Family felt functional, not fragile. A final civil judgment arrived one afternoon, confirming restitution complete and damages satisfied. Hannah read the summary, signed acknowledgement, and closed the case file permanently. No ceremony followed. She stepped outside and breathed deeply, letting the chapter end. Community responses shifted too. Whispers faded, invitations became normal. Hannah chose selectively, protecting energy. She learned that closure included saying no to reminders. Work recognized her contributions with expanded responsibility and autonomy. Hannah accepted with clear limits, prioritizing sustainability. Success no longer required self-sacrifice. One evening, Hannah stood by the river with Ethan and the children, watching sunset paint the water. She felt gratitude without relief, strength without hardness. The past had consequences. So did endurance. Hannah understood now that justice was not loud satisfaction. It was quiet alignment. Actions met outcomes. Harm met limits. Care met continuity. As night settled, Hannah tucked the children in and reviewed tomorrow's plans. She felt capable, supported, and calm. The story that once threatened to define her now rested behind her, documented and resolved. She turned off the light knowing the ending was not an explosion, but a foundation. Consequences had landed where they belonged. Her life moved forward, steady and protected, built on truth, boundaries, and love that asked nothing back. Tomorrow arrived without alarms blaring, only light through curtains and familiar sounds. Hannah brewed coffee, packed lunches, and reviewed schedules with ease. She checked accounts, confirmed childcare, and sent a few emails. Everything worked. Later, she walked the park path, greeting neighbors by name, feeling present. She reflected on lessons learned. Document early, trust patterns, protect rest, choose allies. None were dramatic, all were durable. When evening came, Hannah read to Lily, soothed Noah, and shared a quiet meal with Ethan. They talked about plans, boundaries, and gratitude. Before bed, Hannah wrote one line in her journal, simple and true. The past was complete. The future was intentional. She slept, knowing safety was no longer temporary, but maintained through choices she would continue making, calmly, daily, and without apology. It felt earned, sustainable, and real. Hannah accepted uncertainty without fear, welcomed help without debt, and offered care without control. Each morning, renewed commitment, each night confirmed progress. The cycle continued, resilient and quiet, proving that endings can be solid beginnings when accountability holds and love remains attentive within families, communities, and futures built carefully together forward. A year after the verdict, Hannah marked progress, not with ceremonies, but with habits. She woke early, moved her body, reviewed plans, and chose calm. The river path became a classroom where patience replaced vigilance. She noticed how confidence arrived quietly, earned through repetition. Lily started first grade with a backpack too big for her shoulders, and courage bigger still. Noah followed routines, secure and curious. Hannah volunteered at the school library once a week, predictable and present. Stability taught the children what safety looked like. Work evolved into leadership grounded in boundaries. Hannah documented processes, trained teams, and protected time. She declined urgency disguised as importance. Results improved. Respect followed. She accepted praise briefly, then returned to practice. Ethan remained consistent, affectionate without pressure. They shared calendars, budgets, and expectations openly. Disagreements stayed specific and solvable. Repair happened quickly. Love felt collaborative, not consuming. Samuel settled into his role as grandfather with humility. He asked permission, kept commitments, and apologized when needed. Repair matured into trust that endured distance. One afternoon, Hannah received a letter from a woman she had met months earlier at a workshop. The woman wrote that she had left safely, documented evidence, and found work. The note was simple. Hannah cried softly, then placed it in a drawer marked Gratitude. Community expanded through service. Hannah helped design a local protocol for reporting concerns, focusing on clarity and follow-up. The work was unglamorous and effective. That mattered. Travel returned in measured ways. A weekend by the coast included checklists, rest, and laughter. Preparation made joy possible. Hannah watched the children play and felt present without scanning. At home, she curated reminders that anchored peace. Documents labeled, contacts updated, photos framed, systems maintained. Fear no longer drove maintenance, care did. As summer ended, Hannah reviewed goals and closed those completed. She updated wills, guardianship plans, and savings targets. Planning felt like kindness to the future. On an evening walk, Ethan asked Hannah how she defined success now. She answered without hesitation. Success was continuity with dignity. Success was choice exercised daily. Success was children who slept peacefully. Hannah slept deeply that night. Morning arrived gentle. She prepared breakfast, kissed foreheads, and stepped into the day ready. The past no longer chased her. It informed her. She carried lessons without weight, boundaries without bitterness, and love without fear. Hannah understood that healing was not an endpoint but a practice sustained by clarity, community, and care. The life she built stood firm, not because harm disappeared, but because accountability remained and attention stayed focused. She moved forward, grounded, grateful, and free. Committed to ordinary days she would protect fiercely for her family. Over time, Hannah learned to celebrate quietly. She marked anniversaries with notes, not posts, and measured growth by sleep, laughter, and follow-through. When stress surfaced, she returned to basics: water, movement, documentation, and rest. She taught Lily to name feelings and Noah to trust routines. Together they practiced consent, choice, and repair in small moments. Hannah stayed alert without suspicion, open without naivety. She kept mentors, maintained therapy, and scheduled joy deliberately. The future felt open yet structured, flexible yet protected. Hannah accepted uncertainty as normal and preparation as love. With each season, her confidence compounded. The story ended without spectacle, but with continuity she would defend daily, calmly, and together. It honored truth, rewarded patience, and placed children at the center, where safety belongs, teaching that justice can be quiet, durable, and kind, sustained by systems, relationships, and choices repeated with care over time through discipline, accountability, humility, resilience, and love together. The final chapter did not announce itself with drama, but with continuity that felt earned. Hannah woke before dawn, listening to the house breathe, and understood that safety had become routine. She dressed quietly, prepared breakfast, and packed lunches without hurry. The ordinary rhythm felt like victory. Sunrise painted the kitchen softly as Lily padded in, hair tangled, smiling. Noah followed, steady on his feet, reaching for Hannah's hand. These moments were the reward no court could grant. Hannah moved through them fully present, no longer calculating risk. Later that morning, the family walked to the river. Ethan carried the bag, unasked. Samuel met them there, respectful, warm, and unintrusive. They sat together, watching water move forward, without resistance. Hannah reflected on how her life now resembled that flow, directed but free. The past remained documented, not erased. Consequences remained in place, not celebrated. Derek and Vanessa existed only as records and lessons. Their absence no longer echoed. Justice had completed its work by staying. Hannah returned home and opened her journal for the last time in this chapter. She wrote what she had learned plainly. Truth grows when spoken early. Boundaries protect love. Preparation is not fear. Silence is never safety. Choice must be practiced daily. In the afternoon, Hannah helped Lily with homework and guided Noah through blocks scattered on the floor. Laughter filled the room. It was not loud, but it was real. Hannah realized she trusted this life enough to relax inside it. As evening came, Ethan cooked while Hannah reviewed plans for the week ahead. Work, school, rest, and joy shared equal space. Balance was no longer fragile. It was maintained through attention and respect. After the children slept, Hannah stepped outside alone. The city lights reflected across the river, familiar and calm. She thought about the woman she had been when fear directed her choices. That woman had survived. This woman was living. Hannah understood now that karma was not spectacle, it was alignment. Those who harmed lost access. Those who protected gained trust. She had received what could be earned: safety, dignity, partnership, and peace. When she returned inside, Hannah locked the door once, turned off the lights, and rested. Tomorrow would bring ordinary challenges and ordinary joy. She welcomed both. The story ended without vengeance, but with fulfillment that satisfied deeply. Hannah closed her eyes knowing she had protected her children, honored truth, and chosen love without surrender. That was enough. It was everything. She reflected on endurance, remembering nights of fear, and acknowledged the distance traveled without bitterness. Growth had not erased memory, but it transformed it into guidance. Hannah accepted responsibility for her future with humility, aware that vigilance and joy must coexist. She committed to continued learning, therapy, and community service, understanding that healing stays active. The children slept peacefully, unaware of chapters behind them, free to build their own stories. Ethan checked the windows quietly, not from fear, but care. Samuel sent a short message wishing them rest. Hannah smiled. Tomorrow promised work, play, and rest again. She would greet it prepared, compassionate, and steady, trusting systems, honoring boundaries, and choosing love that listens. In that choice, she found lasting freedom. This ending offered no spectacle, only continuity. Hannah accepted it gratefully, knowing quiet peace often follows great storms. She would guard it daily, teach it gently, and share it honestly. The cycle of harm ended here, replaced by care, accountability, and hope sustained through ordinary, intentional days lived forward. Her journey affirmed resilience, dignity, and love, leaving a legacy of courage for generations ahead, always. So, the story has come to a close. And if you're still here with us right now, truly still here, then something in this journey has touched your heart in a quiet but powerful way. What this story teaches us is not about revenge or dramatic victories. It's about alignment, about how life slowly, inevitably, corrects itself when we choose truth, boundaries, and self-respect. The Stoics believed this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Healing doesn't arrive as noise, it arrives as clarity. Another Stoic truth says, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that's exactly what we witnessed. When someone stops begging for fairness and starts living with integrity, consequences take care of themselves. Pain becomes information. Fear becomes preparation. And silence is replaced with choice. If this story resonated with you, maybe it's because you're rebuilding too. Maybe you're learning that peace is something you maintain, not something you wait for. And that's okay. You're not behind. You're becoming. If this message spoke to you, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach the hearts that are still searching for light. Thank you for being here.